Before there was a switch on the wall, how did a family sleep through a hard winter without freezing in the dark or burning the house down trying not to? They did not just pile on blankets and hope. In Japan, the answer was a sealed bottle of hot water, wrapped in cloth and tucked into the bedding down by the feet, holding its warmth until the sun came up. You did not heat the room. You filled one small thing and carried your warmth to bed. It cost almost nothing. It ran on no power at all, and a good one outlasted the children who slept beside it. We traded that bottle for a heater that hums all night over an empty sleeping room and a bill that never stops. There is one part of using that old bottle that almost everyone gets wrong today, and getting it wrong is how you end up burned. Hold that thought. First, the cold room you are paying to keep warm while you are unconscious. Here is what actually happens in most homes once the lights go out. The bedroom is cold, so you turn up the thermostat, or you click on the electric blanket and you fall asleep. Then for the next 7 or 8 hours, a machine quietly works to keep a whole room of air warm. Not your body, the air, the space above the wardrobe, the gap behind the curtains, the corner by the door you never once touch in the night. All of it heated to the same temperature as the few square feet where you are actually lying, and all of it paid for by the hour while you are too asleep to feel a single degree of it. The electric blanket feels like the smarter version, and it is better than warming the whole room. But look at what it really is. It is a grid of thin wires sewn into fabric, running on your wall current all night, sold to you as a comfort and quietly worn out by the using of it. The cord frays, the coils fail, the fabric thins, and every few winters you buy another one, because that is how the thing is built to behave. Meanwhile, the meter on the outside of your house keeps turning slow and steady all the way to morning. Now set that against the bottle from the start of this video. The simplest plastic yutanpo costs just a few dollars. A good metal one, the wavy shelled steel kind, runs somewhere around $20 to $40 one time and then lasts for years, sometimes for decades. The only thing you ever add to it is hot water, which comes out of a tap you already pay for, a couple of quarts at a time, for pennies. There is no cord to fray and no coil to fail, and nothing inside it is built to wear out, so you have to buy it again. You fill the bottle, you wrap it in cloth, you put it where your feet go, and you carry your warmth to bed. That is the trade this whole video is about. You are not signing up to heat less and shiver more. You are heating the one small space that matters, the bed your body is actually in, and letting the cold, empty room stay cold and empty, the way it has every right to be at 2 in the morning. The families who did this were not roughing it. They were doing something far more sensible than what most of us do now, and they were doing it 500 years ago. Let me show you where this bottle came from, and why it works better than a jar of water has any business working. I want to take you back to the kind of house this bottle belonged in, because it changes how the whole thing makes sense. Picture an old wooden farmhouse, a minka, with paper screens for inner walls and gaps around every sliding door wide enough to feel the wind move through. There was no furnace humming in a basement, because there was no basement and no furnace. The only real fire in the house was the hearth in the main room, a sunken square of ash and glowing charcoal where the family cooked and gathered. When everyone finally went off to their sleeping rooms, they were walking away from the only heat in the building, into rooms that were, by any honest measure, freezing. So the warmth had to travel with you. In my family, the last task of the night belonged to whoever was still awake. You heated water on the stove, poured it carefully into the metal bottle, screwed the cap down hard, and slid the bottle into a thick cloth sleeve so it could not scald anyone. Then you carried it down the cold hallway and pushed it deep into the futon, down near the foot, a good 10 or 15 minutes before anyone lay down. By the time you climbed in, the bed was not a cold trap anymore. It was a warm pocket waiting for you. Nobody in that house called this a trick. It was just the last thing you did before sleep, like sliding the door bolt shut. The bottle itself is worth looking at closely because the shape is not decoration. The classic Japanese yutanpo is a flattened metal oval, usually plated in zinc so it will not rust, with its whole surface pressed into deep waves and ridges. Those ridges are doing two quiet jobs at once. They make the thin metal far stronger, so it can take being filled with very hot water night after night for years without buckling, and they spread the heat out across more surface, so the warmth feeds gently into the bedding instead of sitting in one scorching spot. It is a humble object that has obviously been shaped by a lot of cold nights and a lot of working hands. There are heavier ceramic ones too, round and glazed like a piece of pottery, and there is a good reason those exist, which I will come back to in a moment. Now here is where the skeptic in me went looking years later, because a warm bottle in a bed sounds almost too plain to have a real history. It turns out the idea is far older than the Japanese farmhouse it lived in. The hot water warmer traces back to Tang dynasty China more than 1,000 years ago, where it was called the Tang po. It came across to Japan and was taken up here during the Muromachi period. And this is not a vague a long time ago. The earliest written mention of it in Japan is dated to the year 1484, turning up in a dictionary from that year and in the diary of a scholar monk from the same decade. That is a real written record sitting in the historical archive, not a folk story. It means that less than a decade before Columbus first crossed the Atlantic, families in Japan were already filling a sealed bottle with hot water and sleeping warm beside it. 500 years later, we decided we needed a machine and a monthly bill to do the very same job. The tradition is not a museum piece either. People are still making these bottles the old way. In the city of Himeji, there is a metalworking shop called Onoe Seisakusho that has been turning out galvanized steel yutanpo for about half a century. The founder came out of a family of tinsmiths who made the metal roofs for shrines, and after the Second World War, he took that same skill with sheet metal and pointed it at household goods, the watering can and the hot water bottle among them. The steel bottles that come out of that workshop are the kind a family hands down, not the kind anyone throws away. And those heavy ceramic ones have a story of their own. During the Pacific War, metal in Japan was pulled straight out of people's homes to be melted down for the war effort, right down to cooking pots and temple fittings. A steel yutanpo was suddenly a luxury the country could not spare. Therefore, the potters stepped in, and households got through some brutal winters with hot water bottles made of fired clay instead of metal. The object was simply too useful to give up. It changed what it was made of and carried right on. So let me give you the single best detail about this whole object, the one that made me stop and sit still when I found it. Look at how the Japanese actually write the word yutanpo. The characters are hot water, and then a character that means, of all things, old woman, or more kindly, wife. A jar of hot water, named after a wife. The reason behind it is almost tender once you hear it. Before this bottle existed, the warmest and most reliable thing you could put in a cold bed on a winter night was another human body. The yutanpo was understood as a gentle stand-in for exactly that, the warmth of a person lying beside you, bottled up and tucked under the quilt. Once you know that, you cannot unsee it. People were not only heating the sheets, they were recreating the oldest comfort there is, the heat of someone next to you with a sealed pot of water and a cloth. But sentiment is not why it works, and I promised you the researcher, not only the grandson. The reason a bottle of hot water can warm a bed for hours comes down to one property of water we rarely stop to think about. Water is unusually good at holding on to heat. Pound for pound, it soaks up and stores more warmth than almost anything else you have lying around the house, more than metal, more than sand, more than the room air your heater works on all night. That is the same reason the ocean stays mild, while the land around it bakes and freezes, and it is why a hot bath stays hot long after a heated rock would have gone cold. When you pour a couple of quarts of hot water into that steel bottle, you are loading it with a real store of heat, and water lets that heat back out slowly, in no hurry at all. Then the bedding does the second half of the job. A thick futon and a heavy quilt are excellent insulators, full of trapped air, and they hold that gentle warmth around your body instead of letting it leak away into the cold room. So you have a small reservoir of slow heat sitting inside a well-insulated pocket. That is the whole reason one filling can stay warm for hours, often right through until morning, while running on nothing at all. There is no clever technology hiding in there. It is just water, doing the quiet thing water does, inside a wrapped steel shell the size of a loaf of bread. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, the old, plain, sensible methods our grandparents leaned on before everything came with a cord and a bill, then subscribe and come along. I put up a new one of these every few days. That is the only time I will ask you for anything. Now back to the bottle. Here is exactly how you do it, because the small details are the difference between this working beautifully and this being a soggy disappointment. Start with hot water, but not boiling water. You want it hot like a strong cup of tea, well under the boil, somewhere around 150 to 160 degrees, which is plenty. With the ceramic and plastic bottles especially, boiling water can warp them or build steam pressure inside, and you simply do not need that much heat. Fill the bottle most of the way to the top, not half full, because a full bottle keeps its proper shape and holds far more of that stored warmth than a sloshing, half-empty one. Screw the cap down firmly and check it, then tip the bottle upside down over the sink for a second to be sure it is not weeping at the seal. Now wrap it. Every yutanpo goes inside a cloth cover or a thick towel, always, with no exception. The wrap is not there to look pretty. It softens the heat into a gentle, even warmth, and it keeps the hot metal off bare skin. Then, and this is the step people skip, slide the wrapped bottle into the bed early, a good 10 or 15 minutes before you get in, down at the foot where your feet will land. Warm feet are a big part of why this feels as good as it does. When your feet are warm, the rest of the body relaxes and lets go into sleep more easily, which is the entire point at the end of a cold day. And here is the open loop from the start of this video, the one thing almost everyone gets wrong, the thing that quietly turns a warm night into a trip to the doctor. People treat the yutanpo like an electric blanket. They pull it in tight against the body, hug it to the stomach or the legs, and drift off wrapped around it for the whole night. Please do not do that. It causes something called a low temperature burn, and it is sneakier than an ordinary burn precisely because it never feels dangerous in the moment. A surface only a little above your own body heat, something just over 100 degrees, will not hurt when you touch it, but press it against the same patch of skin for hours while you are asleep and cannot feel it, and it can cook that skin slowly deep down, leaving a genuine burn by morning. The people most at risk are exactly the ones least able to notice it happening: small children, the elderly, and anyone exhausted, unwell, or after a few drinks. So the rule is simple, and it is the rule that Old Farmhouse already lived by. Use the bottle to warm the bed, then move it away from your body, down to the foot of the bed, or out from under the covers entirely before you settle in. You want to climb into the warmth it left behind, not lie pressed against the source of it all night long. Let me be square with you about what this bottle will not do, because that honesty is the whole reason to trust the rest of it. A yutanpo will not heat your bedroom. The air in the room stays cold, and if you get up at 3 in the morning for a glass of water, the floor will be just as icy as it always was. This warms the bed and your body in it, and nothing more than that. The water also cools down over the course of the night, so by the time the alarm goes off, the bottle is closer to lukewarm than hot, and the bedding is holding whatever heat is left through the coldest hours before dawn. So I am not telling you to switch off your furnace and tough out the winter on a jar of water. I am telling you to stop paying to heat an empty bedroom all night, and to stop buying a new electric blanket every couple of years, when the bed itself, the only part that matters while you are asleep, can be warmed for the cost of boiling a kettle. And it barely costs you even that because of one more old habit that travels with it. In the morning, you do not pour that water down the drain. You tip it back into the kettle, or use it to rinse the breakfast dishes, or carry it out to the garden. The bottle gets emptied, wiped, and left to dry with the cap off, so the rubber seal stays good, ready for the next night. A decent metal yutanpo treated that way does not last one season. It lasts years, and the good steel ones get handed down and keep working for a second generation that never paid a cent toward them. So why did nearly all of us forget this? Here is the honest answer, and it is not some conspiracy with a villain twirling his mustache. It is only money, and which direction money flows. Nobody can build a business out of telling you to fill a bottle with tap water. There is no monthly charge in it, no cord to replace, no shiny new model next year. The electric blanket, on the other hand, has a cord that wears out, a controller that fails, and a built-in reason to sell you the next one before long. The overnight heating has a meter bolted to your house, quietly counting every hour you sleep. The money flows toward the things that meter you and the things that wear out, and it flows away from a plain steel bottle that simply keeps doing its job. The yutanpo did not lose because it stopped working. It lost because there was nothing left to sell in it. That is exactly why it is worth keeping alive. This is the sort of small, sturdy knowledge that does not get taught anymore unless somebody bothers to pass it on. And it is the sort your grandchildren could use on a cold night long after the appliance you bought this year is sitting in a landfill. So pass it on. Fill a bottle tonight, warm your bed the old way, and tell me one thing down in the comments: how warm your bed still was when you woke up, and whether anyone in your own family ever kept one of these. I read them, and they are what keeps this a conversation instead of a lecture. If you want the next one, we are slowly walking back through the methods people used before comfort came with a bill, one cheap, real, sensible thing at a time. The next one turns this whole idea on its head for summer, because this winter trick is really about one stubborn rule: warm the small space that matters and leave the rest of the room alone. And that exact rule has a hot weather twin. When a summer room turns into an oven, the Japanese answer was not to fight the heat once it had already poured in. It was to stop the sun before it ever became heat at all, with a simple hanging screen of split bamboo called sudare, fixed on the outside of the window. That is where we go next. For tonight, though, the lesson is as old as that 1484 record and as plain as it sounds. The room can stay cold. You only ever needed to carry your warmth to bed.